Consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission, to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
All right. Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the universe between your ears. I'm Tim Starr. I am joined for this episode by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Gabi Musheyev.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, for that attribute that you assign to me every time he comes up with something new.
And this is going to be a fun conversation, I suspect. I've been looking forward to this. So our guest today is Delora Guignion. And Delora is a Mindsex mentor. She works with men and women, combining their mindset and sexual energy work to create sizzle between the sheets, passion in their life, and profit in their business. Once you've tapped into the power of your sexual energy, there are no areas off limits, no desires too big, and no goals that can't be conquered. And now, after her own transformation, her own realizations, she walks people through a transformation from inhibited and not daring to ask for what they want in business or in the bedroom, to confident and commanding of pleasure in every facet of their life. Delora, thank you for showing up. And I don't know what we're in for. This is going to be fun.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So why don't we start with your moniker, Mindsex Mentor. Tell people how you put that together and what it means and all that good stuff.
For sure. So a number of years ago when I started my coaching business, I was in mindset and it was going great. I loved it, but I was a little bit flat in some areas. I wasn't, that wasn't turning me on. But what I was finding is that all of my clients wanted to talk to me about sex. And that's kind of been my life since I've been in my teens. Everyone trusted me with their sex secrets, so to speak. And I've always studied sex. It was something I took in school along with psychology. When I did my master's degree, I was still doing some side studies around sex energy and leadership and how the two are connected. And then 3 beautiful women witnessed me take a gentleman in a hotel lobby through a 45-minute conversation. He was really holding back in his business, but he was also having some erectile dysfunction issues in the bedroom. And he opened up beautifully in front of these 3 women. They couldn't believe that he was so comfortable. And I took him through a conversation to realize where these paths were. And it really was that he was dominated by his mother. His mother really had, still 50 years old, control of his life. And when we unraveled that for him, he tapped into this power and this realization that he could show up much differently and not have to worry about, if he went into a dominant role in his business, like as a boss, he felt that he was talking back to his mother because he had a lot of female people that worked with him. And then in the bedroom with his lover, he wasn't married, but he felt shame because his mother didn't approve of him not being married again. He had once been married and had been divorced for quite a while and was happy like that. It was going well for him. And so all of this was built up. And of course, he was going to have issues that way. And after the conversation, about 2 or 3 days later, he emailed me to say that it was probably one of his favorite conversations. And the women that witnessed me go through it, they're like, oh my God, that's what you have to do. And I'm like, well, that is what I do. And one of them channeled the message that I am not a mindset mentor, but a mindsex mentor. And so that's how it came to be.
That's incredible. Cool. Yeah. When did that happen? Was that a recent discovery or?
It's been about 3 years now since I changed over to Mindsex.
The moment you showed up on my screen, I immediately thought that if I needed a sex coach, I would want exactly this person because visually you totally fit the requirement.
Well, that's good.
It's the energy that you emit, and I see from your story that that's what people actually saw. Exactly. I'm blessed with these gifts. I didn't always realize or respect that they were there. I didn't really understand them, but the fact that people within minutes feel comfortable telling me
really deep secrets. And, you know, when you're talking to, you know, either a woman that's really closed down sexually, or like a control freak, or if I'm talking to a man who feels the same way, you know, just to be able to have them open up and trust me with such deep things
They
is
somehow
powerful.
think that you won't judge. I think that
I don't judge. Yeah.
You won't judge.
That's key.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the person.
Gabby, you're light.
Again?
Yeah. Or maybe it's because you're leaning in.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
He's drawn to you, Delora. He's just like,
He's drawn into me. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
yeah. So, what was I going to ask? Just like that. I had something I was going to ask you, and then it just, as soon as I started opening my mouth, it went away.
You put a spell on you.
Yeah.
What's happening? I'm getting drawn. You're under spell.
Uh-oh.
Well, no, you know what I wanted to talk about was, and a lot of people talk about it this way, and we had a conversation with a friend of ours, Jane Gwynn, who's a how does she label herself as sexual communications. I forget exactly how she labels herself, but the idea of money being energy and sexual energy and all of these pieces. So I wanted to sort of see if a clumsy way of asking for your perspective on that connection.
Absolutely.
That's what you're all
It's
about is
huge.
those together. So.
Yeah, money and sex. Yeah, for sure. So money and sex are the two most shamed things in our life. You know, if you think about when you were raised, you probably people didn't talk about sex, or if they did, it was hush hush, or, you know, don't touch yourself, or don't explore that, or you have to be in love, or you have to be married, or blah, blah, all this stuff. But the same thing with money, you know, chances are they didn't sit you down and talk to you about what the budget is, what they bring in, how they make money, where it comes from, what sales are like, what's business like. There's all of these stories wrapped around sex and money. What people don't realize is that your subconscious hangs on to these stories, these patterns, and they're like a soundtrack running in your head all day long. And because of that, like say, for example, you're in a sales conversation with someone and they put up a little bit of resistance to what you're selling them, and something they say triggers a shame or a guilt in you, it's the same shame or guilt that you would feel if you were standing naked in front of them. So you immediately shut down, or you get defensive, or you're not able to get over that resistance because you are feeling the shame and guilt of something that probably happened 30, 40 years ago, 20, 30, you know, depending on the age of who's listening. So you really have to tap into what is my story. And what I found is that when I'm able to do a map, there's an exercise I can give you guys for your listeners. I do a bit of a mind map of where everybody, it's not a mind map, but how everybody is in their sex life, their business life, and their personal life. And when I take them through that, I can leverage the areas that are going well and help them identify the patterns in the areas that aren't going well and project forward. And so it breaks it down for them. So, you know, it's not like you get up in the morning and like your whole day is ruined. You're like, okay, this area is an area I need to focus on, but the rest is going well. And when I can get them tapped into that energy in a really positive way, money flows so easily. And they're like, oh my God, this is, you know, so fantastic. But the other thing is that everything is energy. So have you ever seen someone that's really desperate for a date, or you know, if you've been out there, you see these people that are showing up so desperate? It's the same thing if you're desperate for clients or sales. That energy is felt, and people like are not drawn to that desperate energy. Or, you know, the snake oil salesman is the same thing. They're probably slimy in the bedroom too, because it's the same energy that's being transmitted. And we want to like them, but there's something we just don't trust about them. And that's, you know, that's how it's all tied together.
That's an interesting point. I never thought of this. So when you want it so much, right, and you almost like obsessed with it, right, that actually prevents it from happening.
Yeah, totally does.
Yeah.
People pick up on it. They don't know that they're picking up on it. They just have this feeling like there's something I don't like about it. In fact, I had a client that we had worked together. I think it was probably about 6 months. Our time was done. And about a month or two later, I saw some of her posts, and it wasn't a video. It was just what she was writing. And I reached out to her and I said, how are you doing? And she's like, well, you know, money's not coming in. I don't feel good, you know, whatever. And in a 20-minute conversation, I'm like, I feel your desperation. I feel that you don't have money coming in. Now, I happen to be an empath, so I can feel people's energy, but I could see it in the way it was written, and there was just something about it, and she was repelling her clients. And what it was is she had not been connecting with her husband as much as she had wanted to, and that was an area that was really strong for her when we were working together. And again, the patterns in her mind just took over, and she ended up focusing on the wrong things again. So
yeah, how do you break out of that pattern, of thinking? I mean, well, going back to that example, right? So somebody who really wants a date, right? So desperately that energy is felt and people are repelled from it, right?
Yeah.
Naturally, maybe they would give him or her a chance, but it's just not natural and they're not attracted to this. And so that means that there has to be transformation, right? But who will do this? That's what you need. The professionals like yourself, right? Helping them and consulting them.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is the most important area to have a coach, and that's in mindset. And it's not because I'm doing it. It really is because you can't see your own blind spots. Your brain is designed not to show you what needs to be fixed, because it would consider it dangerous. That's why, when you see people that are in, negative relationships.
It would consider it dangerous. The ego.
Right.
Is self-preserving, right?
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah. And the subconscious also doesn't know anything other than the patterns it has been introduced to. So unless you were raised being a risk taker, anything that's outside of these normal patterns is seen as a risk, and so you won't do it. The change just won't happen. And so what I help them do is identify, what is the pattern to begin with? Why is it you feel like this? And what is the truth? Because I work with some people that they say, well, they're okay with casually dating, but the truth is actually no, they're not. They really want a relationship. So they may attract someone to them because they have a lot going for them, but then their energy shifts and they immediately go into this desperate, you need to be my partner, be my boyfriend, be my boyfriend. So when I help them take a step back and be honest about the fact they're actually looking for a relationship, then when they put that energy out there, it's a truthful energy, and they don't have to shift anything up. And also to do what they need to do to fill themselves up. You cannot be filled up by anyone else anyway. So what is it that you're missing in your own life that you can start here? Do you need more fun? Do you need a hobby? Do you need to have more self-pleasure? Do you need to, just be central with yourself? There's all kinds of things that you can do to kind of shift that energy before you go out there.
Have you seen many examples of people actually finding that? To me, I was like, if there's a person wise enough to see through this and see the person behind and give them a chance, right? And that could just basically be the feedback, just what they need, to start getting on that path, right? But you're lucky if you get that person, right? Without coaching, I agree with you. This is amazing help.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that because you don't want to change, your mind will not let you consistently do it. The patterns are, in my case, I'm 42 years old, and 42 years of patterns, well, probably less than that because I've been changing them for a while, but they have existed that long. So if you think about, if you're trying to turn a boat around in a minute, or a train that's been going in a way, it's not going to be immediate. And sometimes, I know when I was leaving my corporate job, it was 15-minute blocks. I would have to go through the mindset stuff that I had to do to make sure I didn't fall into the pattern of doubting that I was going to be able to make it out of there.
Right.
And, you have to be diligent about it. And the other thing is, you don't know where these tripwires are going to be. You could be going fine for a year, and then all of a sudden, something happens that is a shock to yourself, and you could find yourself all the way back.
But ultimately, they need to start loving themselves, right? For who they are, right? And that's quite a job, to get. Basically, a whole consciousness transformation needs to happen, right? So, is that like the only path towards that? That's what you're pursuing, right? Basically,
Yeah, it's not the only path. A sudden trauma is a way that your mind changes, but nobody wants that. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But when they say if you fall off a horse, you have to get right back on, because that sudden trauma. Pardon?
Hypnosis, no?
Hypnosis is one thing that it depends how susceptible your mind or open your mind is to it. I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I've heard that it can be effective. But the sudden trauma it immediately breaks the pattern and you learn a new one. That's why you have to get back on the horse so you don't stay scared of it. But then it's constant spaced repetition. So you have to keep repeating what you're doing in the action that you want to go in. But your subconscious is so pervasive, like it just does not want change so much that it will do subtle things. I had a client that I was working with before she started working with me. She wanted to start doing public speaking. And she had 5 or 6 opportunities, but every time something happened, one time she had a flat tire, her PowerPoint presentation wouldn't work, she had laryngitis, something else happened, she got the address wrong or something. And she said, why is this happening? I want to do it. She was nervous. She knew she was nervous. She knew she was a little bit hesitant to put herself out there, but she couldn't understand why this was. And I said, well, what was the first time that you remember speaking up publicly and it not going well? And she was 13 years old. She lived in Toronto, so it was a pretty big school, and the classrooms were almost like the auditorium style. And she was sitting beside a boy that she had a crush on. She didn't have a close relationship with her mom, but the teacher was his mother. And so here's an authority figure, a mother figure, and a crush. And she gave an answer in the math class, got it wrong. He laughed, the teacher, mother laughed, and the whole class laughed. So her subconscious took that on as, you will never speak up publicly because you're going to be humiliated. So a flat tire and a laryngitis was connected to that. Yeah. And it sounds far-fetched, but your mind is so powerful. After we talk, she now has speaking engagements all the time. She's still nervous, but she does them. She completes them.
And some are more susceptible to this than others, right? It's amazing how vulnerable a child could be, that this could have such a lasting, damaging effect, right? Is that, do you think, because of like parenting wasn't sufficient? They were not, I mean, something made them vulnerable towards that, right? Like
we all are. I mean, when we're born, until we're about 7 and really 7 to 11, your conscious mind is not there when you're born. So your conscious mind is where you think, where you filter things out, where you make decisions from. But if you're just a subconscious mind, which is your feeling brain, your long-term memory, your storage area, it goes straight into your subconscious. So everything in your environment is there. And your parents are just passing on the patterns that they know. They may not have any other awareness than what they're teaching you. It's not like they're trying to be bad parents. Some are, but many of them aren't. And these patterns are what was passed down to them, from generations where it was much different. The generations that lived through depression, for example, are going to have a very different view on what money and businesses and risk and safety and all of that shows up. The generation where they saw a lot more women going out into the workplace, and then the divorce rate went up and all this and that, they're going to have a different view about marriage, sex outside of marriage, all of that stuff. And so it's passed down generationally. Sometimes it starts even 2 or 3 generations back. It's not that they don't mean to, that they want to, or it's harmful, or that they know that it's harmful. Some of this stuff I didn't realize. I didn't know until I started studying the brain more and realizing that, when you remove the conscious brain from someone, it goes right into your subconscious. You're just going to react from that place. The other thing is that the majority of our day is spent on autopilot if we do not choose a consciousness, choose to think our thoughts. And I use this example with clients. If you want to test this out, try walking up the stairs for the first time in a pair of high heels. If you don't wear heels on a regular basis, you are relearning how to take those stairs. And you have to think about each step you have to take, and that you have to go a little bit higher. And, when you come down, you have to make sure that you hit the heel first or the toe, and you don't realize, you probably don't think about the stairs you walked up today. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to relearn it. The 23,000 breaths you have to take a day, your subconscious mind just makes sure that happens, which is, thank goodness it does. But then the rest of your day, if you're not conscious of it, you'll just go through autopilot. You'll just react. If we're talking about parenting, there's been some times in my past, I have 4 kids, they would say something and would set me off. And then afterwards, I'm like, guys, mommy's sorry. I didn't mean to react that way, but I was not conscious, using my conscious thinking when I was reacting. I was just on autopilot, and something made me react, but I'm responsible for that. So,
yeah, the pattern of just for the parents to, pass on to their kids all those, programs and all those things. I mean, it's just, there's no way that could be stopped, right? So then that means there has to be an effort from the society to unwind this, right, and get them on the right path. And I think that's what we're having. That's why we're having these coaches and all the, basically this podcast is about that as well, essentially.
Yeah, that's what's going on now. Is people are talking about all of these different areas that are everything's interwoven and everything affects everything else. And I mean, the internet changed the world overnight. And people, prior to the internet, you just didn't have access to information in the same way. You had to go to the library or you had to depend on the newspaper that you could only get once a day, right? Unless there was a late edition or something. And it's only that big. It has whatever it has in it and nothing more. And you can't ask questions of whoever wrote the stuff and all that. And so, the internet comes around and suddenly everybody has access to everything you want to know or don't want to know. And it's a great thing, but it's also, it's a double-edged sword because it takes away excuses for people. People moving forward from now, if you're a crappy parent, it's almost because you're choosing. There's if you want to be a good parent, you can get more information, in a couple of clicks than you could possibly consume if you want to be a better parent or better whatever, But
the information is there, but for the most
in the past, it basically wasn't. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Definitely.
For sure. Well, access to information is certainly there. What tends to happen is people don't know. When I work with clients, 100% of my clients, it all boils down to self-worth. But if I told them that they had self-worth issues, they would reject the idea. They would just not believe it at all. Most of my clients seem very confident. But it boils down to self-worth, and I have to go through it with layers and help them find the pattern, understand why these two things are connected, where does it come from, so that they have the realization that it's that, and a wall of defense doesn't go up. When someone will read something and it pisses them off, and you're like, why are you reacting so strongly? That's not a big deal. It's just a quote. But it triggers something in them because it is agonizing to their patterns. It's something that they have to reject in order to stay in their shame and guilt.
We are amazingly messed up animals.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
it is. I mean, it's fascinating. But it's crazy how easy it is to create such a lifelong negative. Just a weight around somebody's shoulders with one comment when they're young that just, destroys their self-confidence or their belief that they can do whatever, or, maybe the comment wasn't even bad. They just heard it wrong, whatever.
Listen,
absolutely.
You like grading children at schools, right? When they're basically, and I sometimes go into a classroom and I see, there's like top 5 students and there's a list posted on the blackboard. Right? And I'm thinking, how is my son feeling seeing this top 5 and he didn't make that list? He's high functioning autistic, right? And he's probably getting a message from this that I'm an underachiever, and it just doesn't occur to teachers that, in many schools it does now, right? But it's just, by just simply grading them, you're already kind of creating this problem, right? Of self-worth, self-worth, right?
Yeah, but there's other ways to embrace it too, really. It's like, what went well in your day today, and stop, not focusing on the grades that they get, because there is something to be said for competition. It's important to have competition. It's important to have, if I was number 10 on the list and I want to make top 5, what do I need to do to get there? But the parenting has to be can I ask this, ask that question? And this is, the 3-part exercise I was talking about earlier. That's what I get people to do, is project 3 to 6 months forward. What do I have to do to get there? And who do I need to be to get there? That's the other question that we often don't ask. And the other thing is that I think all adversity comes to us because we're 100% responsible for our lives, 100%. We chose to come into this physical body the way we did, for the reasons we did, to fulfill a purpose in this iteration of us, but to also have these experiences that are going to course correct us or open up an area that we need to focus on. I've had some things happen when I was a kid that wasn't necessarily positive, but it brought me to where I am now and opened me up to my gifts. I wouldn't have been here if I hadn't had those experiences. So for me, it's a really great thing that has happened, but not everybody can see it in that light, and it becomes their sob story or their victim story that they tell over and over and they cling to. But in reality, if those events hadn't happened, they wouldn't have had the lesson or the opportunity that they then got after. Phil Knight talks about that in his book, The Shoe Dog. He's the one that started Nike, and some of the things that happened to him that seemed tragic in the moment, but then it forced him to take a braver or bigger risk that actually opened up another area of his business that wouldn't have been open otherwise. And so, it's all in how you kind of perceive what's happening. Where's the lesson? Where's the opportunity?
Well, you hit so many things. But yeah, it's how you perceive whatever's going on. And my perspective is that any, in the Abraham terms, any contrast that we encounter, anything that happens that we don't like, there's a potential for a lesson in there. If you want to go look for it, there's probably a lesson in whatever just happened.
Yeah.
And we, for whatever reasons, we don't like to go looking for the lesson. And part of it's probably just that if there's a lesson, it means I have to change something, and change is going to kill me, and all that.
Absolutely. And it gets louder and louder. You hear the people that, I should have slowed down in my business. I should have taken time off. I should have relaxed. I should have went on vacation. Then they have a heart attack. They're otherwise healthy, but they have a heart attack. Or they are, they don't pay attention to one area of their life, and, they lose, their spouse walks out. Well, you had signs. Yeah. You just weren't paying attention to the lesson or the opportunity. And what will happen is God, spirit, universe, higher power, your greater consciousness, whatever you want to say, gets louder. It's going to get more dramatic. It's going to force you to pay attention to something, whether you like it or not. Huffington, I can't pronounce her first name, Ariana Huffington. She talks about that in her book, the fact that she lost consciousness, I believe, and cracked her head open because she didn't rest. She never slept. And, she talks about what a dramatic shift that was in her life. She just didn't pay attention to the signs leading up to that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Pregnant pause.
A lot has been said, but I got to tell you guys that, I really revisited my views on competition, right? We mentioned that a little bit, right? And in our society, we hold this view that we need to immerse our children in, in competition. It builds character, it produces excellence. But this camp of people have been proven already scientifically as completely wrong, right? There's a lot of research done recently, and there has to be a show dedicated to this. But I'm just going to say that, many people, scientists, serious thinkers who investigated this, find that there's a lot of problems with that kind of thinking that was introduced into our society. As a matter of fact, some of the biggest problems. Yeah.
I just think it's a natural piece of what we are.
We are.
Animals compete. I don't know how you not compete.
It's measuring yourself against others that has an issue there. You see that using that as a way to find motivation to improve or to grow is not an engine that you need to find power in your true self, not trying to compare yourself, who's got better this, or who's faster, or who is that, to put it in simple words, right? Certainly there is a drive, right? It's a natural drive. It came from that, but anyway, let's not distract this show from, with this topic, right? Yeah, that's an amazing topic, and but it is related to this, to performance in the topic of sex, right? And so the performance for males is, won't you say, Delora, right? I mean, the fear of not being as good as your partner's previous maybe lover or whatever, isn't that a huge insecurity for all males? I mean,
yeah, maybe not all males, but there's, I generally see the two extremes. So the men who feel sexually incompetent, they don't feel comfortable at all sexually, yet they, as a general rule, we raise men to believe they need to be Don Juans and that they should know what to do to get a woman off. But women don't even know how to get themselves off. So how are you going to teach them that? How are they going to know through that without being taught? So there's that, and then there's the ones that are overconfident and have no sense of self awareness, and who, well, just because they showed up, that's enough. Well, no, there's a lot more to it than that. But they're also very closed down to their emotions. So, yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's huge that we have this, conversation. I also I'm in a world where I see a lot of jokes about size, and it's always a joke, but underneath all jokes, there's some level of truth. And that is an insecurity for men, society, and women, because women look at it size of weight, their body weight. Men look at it as size of their appendage. And, it becomes this insecurity. And, am I going to be able to perform good enough? And did she like it? And, there's no real sexual communication. What does it mean to be vulnerable enough to say, can we have a conversation about what you enjoy, and not just a sexting conversation? Like, really, what do you like? How can I turn you on?
Isn't that the key? Is if you can't express to your partner anything, then you got a problem. And then, but if you can just openly say, I don't like that, or that was great, or what, or ask what do you like, and get an honest answer. If you can't have a conversation that's not cloaked in shame, maybe is the word, or, I mean, for some people that's going to be it, but whether it's shame or just embarrassment, or, if you can't talk about sex in specifics as easily as you talk about the specifics of, what's your car do for you, then you got an area to work on.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And this is the same thing. Like, you could substitute the word for sex for money. It's the same thing. We just don't have that level of intimacy that you need, because you can't be that intimate with yourself. A lot of people can't even admit to themselves what their issue is around money, because they don't know it. They don't see it. They are not comfortable talking about it. But a lot of women or men, I hate to generalize, because I do really deal with them in both extremes in both sexes. But the women who, I talked to one woman, she was in her 40s, she'd never experienced an orgasm. And she was what she labeled herself a control freak. She liked to be in control at all times. And before she told me about the sex side, she was just describing about work and how she was feeling some tension, and she wasn't sure how she could be more valuable to the company she was in to extend her contract. When in reality, she was not delegating, not letting go. She had to control everything, so that she got a sense of purpose so strongly from being the one in control that she just couldn't let go. And that also meant she couldn't let go in the bedroom. So she had never experienced an orgasm in her 40s, and she had a very playful lover that was willing to go there with her. And see, the other thing is that when you start having this conversation, if you are not both open to, I'm going to say it, and if I say it and it hurts your feelings, know that I'm coming with love. I'm not saying it in a way to hurt you or whatever, because it is so vulnerable. You're naked, or you're revealing your budget, or an area that you may not be good in doing as well in business. And when you have these conversations, if it's not received with the intent that it's sent, it can cause a whole lot of other problems. So why have the conversation? Let's avoid it altogether.
Right.
And that's typically what happens.
Right. Yeah, it sounded like you were talking about my ex-wife when you're talking about the woman in her 40s. Swear to God. Man.
Right.
Yeah. But her thing was control, but it was control through intimidation. And man, and there was no winning, because you either got in lockstep behind her, and then she had no respect for you after a certain point because you're just following.
Right.
Or, if you had any resistance to anything that she said, now you're the enemy.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's a great way to stay isolated.
Yeah, man. There was no, I shocked her once and I said, we're on the same team. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see, her shock was a lack of self-awareness. She didn't realize that was the pattern that she was living out. She was taught somewhere in her childhood that she had to only count on herself. And to do that, she had to intimidate or dominate. And that's the only way to be safe. Without knowing her, but I sense that that's where it comes from. And that can be tough when you're a partner.
Yeah. She was insecure for no particularly good reason.
Yeah.
But,
she was raised to be insecure. There was patterns there that led her down that path. And it's sad because typically what happens is I work with one person and then they're like, could you talk to my husband, or could you talk to my partner? And so I end up dealing with both. In fact, one woman, I even worked with her mother because she was a big influence in her life. And it's powerful. And when I'm working with the couple, with the two people, I do separate calls and then I join them together at some point when I feel it's appropriate. They do not hear the same thing. What she said and what he said, and I'm in the middle interpreting it, they're like, oh, I didn't see it that way. But I'm an independent, objective view. I don't hold any judgment. They can say whatever they want. So because I can hear them the way they're saying it, I have no skin in the game. And I translate it to the way I know that she's receiving it. It's a completely different conversation. It's like, really? I didn't even realize I was reacting to you that way.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you've got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.